Hello, everyone. Welcome to the ABB Aerospace Podcast, Episode 2. Today I have Dr. Duane Lattimore.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
So today we're going to be talking about his time right now at American Airlines, and previously he was with a variety of different US-based airlines. So we're going to get a little more insights on his experience and what crew management means, since that was the majority of his career was spent in that area. So with over 2 decades of experience in in-flight operations and crew management across major airlines, how have you seen the role of in-flight crew operations change over the years, and especially across the different airlines you've worked at?
Well, technology has been a major part in it. Before, crews had to come down to the actual crew lounge to check in, to get any type of communications from the company. We actually had vertical files where we would leave messages and those types of things. All those things are done automated now through their devices, which most airlines have the iPhone, either the 10 or the 12. Some even do have the 15 and 16, but you're able to push uploads to communications from in-flight or from the company, or they're also able to check in with geofencing and those types of things. So it's changed a lot because you have to actually seek out as a manager that people contact, because they could fly for an entire month and not actually see their manager if they didn't want to. So you have to actually get out there and be at the aircraft, or when they're coming in on flights, be there to make sure that you're available and also to answer any questions. You just have to kind of seek that out.
So do they usually arrive at the airport and meet you, and do you meet them on the aircraft, or is there a typical, like, they have to come check in with you? What does the typical schedule look like?
Well, the typical schedule would, if they are what we call the line holder, where they actually know where they're going, because they're two facets of flight attendants: reserve flight attendants, which are on call, and they're basically assigned their trips based on company needs that day, or the week, or the month. And line holders actually have their actual trips. They already know where they're going. So for the most part, the reserves, they normally will have a shift during the week where they're actually in the crew lounge. So you're able to actually connect with them there. But for the line holders, they will check in on their device. They'll go through security, which we have a special lane at the airports called known crew member, where you
Right.
scan your badge and you go through security, and then you go onto the flight. So what I do, and most managers do, is we meet them at the aircraft. We go from aircraft to aircraft. Of course, DFW has about 840 departures in, let's say, a 3-hour bank.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't get a chance to see everyone, but you do make yourself available in those terminals. So if anything does happen, you're able to quickly intervene.
And when you meet them on board the aircraft, what is the typical responsibilities you have before they depart, and just in general, what are the responsibilities that you have as a crew manager?
Well, for them, the first thing that they do is, once they check in with the agent, they'll go down to the aircraft and they'll have to check their safety equipment, make sure the levels for certain things are where they're supposed to be. And normally when I come down, I'm just there to be the cheerleader. Hey, how you feeling? How you doing? You know, sometimes that seems like a general question, but sometimes people aren't feeling really well. And if you start engaging in that conversation and they've got something going on at home, which has happened quite a few times, where they can't fly, you can go ahead and pull them off the flight and have them take care of whatever it is that they need to take care of. The most important thing is for them to be not just physically there, but mentally. And sometimes things happen. So it's really important for your managers to be out there in the field, in the thick of things, making sure that you're feeling okay. Outside of that, it's just really support. Just making sure that if they're missing something like a coffee pot, or they're missing meals, or something, that those things they have devices where they can talk directly to the tower through a chat. But as with anything in an operation, there's tons of flights, dozens of flights that are departing every couple of minutes. So sometimes those little chats do lose. You get lost sometimes. So it's easy for me to follow up. Hey, what's going on with this? We're 20 minutes from departure and we haven't had these meals or something that the flight attendants needed.
So sometimes you're having to go communicate with catering and some other teams on behalf of the crew, so that way they can worry about getting the aircraft ready to go on time.
Yeah, I want them to focus on during boarding, just focusing on the passengers, making when you first come on the aircraft, you're going to see the flight attendant. So if the flight attendant's not smiling, that kind of sets the tone. So we want our flight attendants to focus on customer engagement. So that's why we're there to kind of put in those little pieces for other things.
What are some of the biggest challenges in managing in-flight operations across different airline cultures, especially now that you're at a full-service carrier like American Airlines compared to in the past when you were at lower-cost carriers like Spirit and Frontier?
Well, the interesting thing with management is that oftentimes the company culture that management feels that they have is very, very different than what their employees see or what the employees feel. So culture-wise, management really has to drive that point in, not just say, hey, we're here for you, but also be there. A lot of times what I've seen at different airlines is that they'll say, hey, we're here for you, but as soon as the flight attendant has a problem and they need to be taken off of a trip because of an illness or they made a mistake and overslept or something, the management factor isn't there. It's more of, at some airlines, it's more of coach and counsel versus finding the root cause, what actually happened.
Yeah. So it's important to actually find the root cause.
To find the root cause, yeah. So that's what, with my management style, that's what I try to do. I'm a servant leader through and through. I do my best to support the operation, but also support the people. That's really, it's really all about the people.
It is a people business.
Yes, it is.
Yes. So, given your experience at multiple airlines, now you're at American, what are some key strategies in maintaining crew coordination, operational efficiency, especially since we're kind of in an era of pilot flight attendant shortages? There have been several news stories about that over the past few years, so I would love your insights on that.
Okay. Well, to start out with management, it's just being flexible. Being in an airline is a 24/7 business. So you can't actually expect to be able to touch your flight attendants 8 to 5. Some flight attendants fly very, very early in the morning. Some fly late at night. Some fly in the middle of the day. So you have to really be flexible and know that just because your shift may be 10 a.m. to maybe 6 or 7 p.m., but you may need to be there a little bit later. Just for the recognition piece, I think that's very important as far as making sure the flight attendants and pilots feel like they're recognized, whether it's their first day on the job, they're getting out of probation, their first year, 10 year, 15, and on to 50 year. What I do find very interesting, though, with the introduction of technology, is that we seem to be moving away from just people, and what I mean by that is it's managing people. So we're using, just the other day I was trying to help a flight attendant. They were coming from training and going home, and they were going to miss their connecting flight. So we were calling crew scheduling, and we went through probably about 3 different prompts and 7s and 10s and press 1 and press 3. And I hope that the airline industry starts bringing it back a little bit more towards just managing people and actually a person being there than AI.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think AI is moving very fast, and especially also in the education industry and every industry where some of us are being very apprehensive about what we're how we're implementing AI, because I think it's very important on how we're implementing technology, because sometimes these developments, they come out too fast and we try to implement them, and then we don't really kind of do the homework on where it would work best, and then we have sometimes problems with these type of things where you kind of have that lack of human engagement, where it's kind of central in some places. You cannot have technology do the whole thing. So I think it's really important to kind of think through that, and I think you brought up a really good point regarding that.
Yeah, and I would like to add too, also with the shortages, I think with the pilot shortage, we've pretty much stepped in. They have a lot of flow-through programs at different airlines that this is really a great time to be a pilot, because you may have to put a little money in it in the very beginning, but the sign-on bonuses are absolutely phenomenal. As far as like the flight attendant shortages, I think companies just, the pay needs to be matched with the actual cost of living. Most of the bases are in very expensive cities like San Francisco, Chicago, and pretty much any place is expensive now. So the starting pay for a flight attendant, they're normally making anywhere from, say, $2,500 to $3,000 a month. And if you're trying to get an apartment, most apartments, even in a place like Dallas, you're looking at maybe $1,600 a month for that. And when you're signing your lease, you have to have 3 times, you should be making 3 times that amount. So if you kind of do rough math, if you want to live by yourself, you're going to be in a significant deficit with only making $3,000 a month. So the pay does need to come up a little bit more. It's just about paying people what they're worth. Airlines can afford it. They can bring their salaries up. And with the contracts that were signed recently with, American and Alaska, I think that the airlines are doing that, and also with Delta as well. Delta seems to be the leader in kind of foreseeing what pay needs to be, and the other airlines tend to follow suit. So, which is great.
But I definitely think that it's gotten a lot better at American, at least from what I've heard, and from the own crew themselves. They're saying that they're getting more for what they're doing, putting in. So I'm happy to hear that.
Me too.
Yeah.
It makes my job a lot easier.
So how does American Airlines approach crew training and then crisis management to ensure operational resilience, especially during disruptions, such as severe weather events or airspace congestion? And then recently what happened at London Heathrow Airport where the power went out. So how does that kind of impact you as a crew manager, and how would you approach that situation, I guess?
Well, when flight attendants start out, my analogy that I always say is, you be like a willow. You just go with the flow, and you kind of have to do that. Within training, of course, it's 6 weeks of training. You get out of those 6 weeks, maybe 1 day of actual training for like meals and the actual service piece of it. The rest of that 6 weeks is pretty much management of what if scenarios. And you have repeated training each year. Each quarter you have remedial training on what to do. So all of the flight attendants, nothing has changed as far as that's concerned. Mm-hmm. That's been a standard. I've been in the industry for about 27 years, so that's been a standard
right.
of crisis management, that these things can happen. So just prepare for it. If you have, it definitely will happen when your trip is supposed to end at 5 p.m. and you've got dinner planned at 7 p.m. Guess what? You're going to be on a delay, and most likely you're not going to make it. It's going to happen.
Yeah.
But you just have to keep that in mind. But for the most part, I think crisis management, it doesn't happen very often in the airline industry when you do have these. That's why they make a big deal out of it when there are plane crashes. It's still one of the safest modes of travel.
It's actually safer than a car.
It's very safe. I mean, especially with the amount of airplanes that are in the sky. The pilots, all the pilots are definitely well trained. The aircrafts are a lot better today and detecting being too close, spacing, and those types of things. So it's very much regulated to a great extent. But when those things do happen, those tragedies, like unfortunately we've had a couple of those tragedies. Flight attendants, that's when I guess the actual public has to recognize that they're doing more than just popping a can of Coke and serving a meal. They actually are able to save you within 90 seconds of if there is an actual emergency. And there's a lot of things that the public isn't really privy to that flight attendants have had to evacuate where it wasn't a major issue, but they were able to do their jobs.
And with your background in international business, how does that help you, especially with global aviation trends impacting the way airlines manage in-flight services and crew operations? How did you decide to kind of go into this space? And why did you choose to pursue your MBA and DBA in international business? Just a little bit more about yourself, I guess, on that part.
Sure, I'd be happy to explain. Well, when I started out as a flight attendant, and I'm not going to say the year, but it was about 27 years ago. But when I started out, it was a great industry. It still is a great industry. It was a great career. It is definitely a what you would call a not just a job, but it is an actual career move to be a flight attendant. I wanted to do something a little bit more than just fly. And I wanted to actually be a manager and being able, coming from that space of being a flight attendant, knowing what it's like, knowing what it's like to not always have 8 to 10 hours worth of rest, sometimes having long days. I felt that I could do more by assisting flight attendants, actually being from that space.
Yeah.
So I pursued my MBA just first, just really just wanting to have more knowledge about business management, because I felt like if I was going to go into management, I wanted to not just have the skills of the job, but also the skills of management. The DBA was more or less, okay, I've taken these classes for my MBA, let's see what else is out there. And I was just really curious. And I really didn't intend to get the DBA, but then I was like, okay, well, I've already taken these classes. The only thing that's left is a dissertation. So, and I had an idea of a dissertation, and my chair loved the idea. So we went with it, and I went on and wrote the dissertation. It took about 4 years to do the research and get everything done, placed in. But I feel right now I'm in a good position to not only help flight attendants, but also help the airline in international space. As we move into supersonic aircraft, as our nations become very, very much smaller with supersonic aircraft becoming a mainstream in the next 20 years, I feel like I'll be very well positioned to lead an airline through that.
And talking about leadership, what leadership qualities have been most critical throughout your career? And following up on that, advice you would give to students or young professionals that want to pursue a career in aviation management?
Well, servant leadership is definitely needed. You have to have that. Being the type of leader that measures success by growth and development, and not just your growth and development, but everyone else's growth and development. I remember Simon Sinek saying one time that leaders are judged by the leaders that they create. So if you're a leader and you're not creating other leaders, then you're not really a leader. You should be, from the moment you step into your position, you should be looking for someone to take your place when you move on. And you should be prepping those people, not just the people that you like, but people that show potential. You know, that not everyone is going to have the same skills, but if they have the intuition and they want it, you should take your time to mentor and pull them up with you when you're able to. Now, what was the second part of that question, too?
Given those qualities, for students, especially that want to enter aviation, whether it be in your space of crew management or at headquarters in like network planning, marketing, communications. What are some just general skills based on what you just talked about that you believe students that are just entering the aviation industry and the commercial side, what are some skills that they should have as they go in?
Well, the first thing that they should do is whatever space that they should go where their heart is. You know, like for me, it was travel, so I went into being a flight attendant. Some people like the technical side of it, so they may go into aircraft mechanics or being a pilot. But I think you should spend some time, boots on the ground, with the people that you're going to be managing. It's very, very important for you to not understand what they do. And a lot of times, what managers will do is they'll just come in and they'll get a bird's eye view of what you do and they'll move on just to check a box. But it's more than that. It's actually understanding not just what they are doing, but what motivates them. Because if you know what motivates people, that helps you as a manager to get them to do things that they may not have thought that they were able even to accomplish. And it's not always money. You know, a lot of people think that, okay, if I just throw more money at hourly wages or whatever, it's gonna promote that. But it's not always that. Sometimes it's quality of life. Sometimes it's just being recognized and
Making them feel valued.
making them feel valued.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's whatever that takes to make them feel valued is what you should do. And I would strongly suggest anyone wanting to go into that space, they really work on people skills and being able to talk to people, understanding people, the whole psychology of people.
Yeah. And lastly, what do you think the future of in-flight crew management looks like, especially now with increased automation and AI-driven scheduling? How do you think the future is going to continue to evolve with that technology and make kind of things more efficient and easier?
Well, it's going to be very interesting in the next 15 years. As I spoke earlier about supersonic aircraft, that's going to change the game as far as the rest periods for pilots and for flight attendants. If you're able to fly from Newark to London in 2.5 hours, typically on an international trip, it's 6 to 8 hours. So you would have a 24-hour overnight, or I think less, between 19 and 25 hours would be the standard. But if you're able to fly 2.5 hours from Newark to London, you could actually fly 2.5 hours back. So it could create a difference of actual flying turns, which like say Dallas to Oklahoma City and back to Dallas, that would be considered a turn, a low time turn. So you're looking at something that's pretty interesting. I don't know how that's going to work out. It will probably, when that becomes mainstream, it'll be probably towards the tail end of my career. But it's going to be interesting to see how supersonic aircraft, once they become a mainstream, how that's going to evolve with crew rest and the work experience and the work hours of the crew.
Well, the last thing I wanted to touch on was that American Airlines has developed a continued care team following the tragic DCA crash in January of Flight 5342 from Wichita to Washington, DCA National Airport. Do you have anything to kind of add about the commitment of airlines after these type of incidents, which very rarely happen, as you said before?
Well, all airlines, every single airline that I worked for, including American Airlines, we have an emergency response team. I wasn't called out to that particular disaster, but I am part of the care team. We have training that we have a 3 or 4 day course of training that we go through. And it's also remedial training every year. And whenever these disasters do happen, you are called out. Basically, the training part of it is realizing that these families have lost someone close to them. So whatever it is that they're going to need, that's what you provide for them. And you also have to take into account that sometimes the media isn't always responsible. So they report things that may not necessarily be true, or they may report theories that they have that have no basis, and you're sitting with this family member and they're asking these questions.
Yeah.
Well, quite recently, it was questioned whether the pilot was a female or not, and all those types of things that really have nothing to do with the air disaster, but it's refocusing the family to, okay, this has happened, what can we do to try to make things better for you, which that sounds kind of like an oxymoron because you did lose someone, but it is what we're there to do.
Yeah.
And it's just it's again adding that people piece back to it, being able to care for someone and to be able to care about their situation and get them what they need, because the last thing you want to do when you lost someone that you love in any type of disaster is have to jump through several hoops to even see them or get things recovered from the space, and that's where we come in. And that's been a standard for airlines for years now. You just don't hear about it as much as we talked about before. There's not a lot of times that we are dispatched, but when we are dispatched out there, everyone, it's anyone in the airline can be a part of that care team. So basically, you just talk to your manager, any of your managing directors, and they will put you in that space and get you connected.
Well, thank you so much for being with us. This was really useful insights for people that want to go into aviation in the commercial side like me, but also for anyone else. So thank you so much for diving so deep into all these questions, and I really appreciate you being here today.
Well, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.